But I'll get the ball rolling first. Ciarán, why did you commission this specific research and what did you want to get out of it?
I suppose the area often radio ads can be more tactical and more short-term based, and I want to have real evidence that shows radio and audio can be used for more long-term brand building. And I think nearly everybody in the room is probably very familiar with Byron Sharp, which was mentioned at the start, and his framework for how brands grow and be successful. So we took that framework and we applied audio and compared it to audiovisual, and you can see really clearly the results show to everybody out there that, you know, if you add audio to your audiovisual, you're going to get better results for long-term brand building, not just for short-term sales, but for long-term brand building. And I'm a broken record about this, but I say it all the time. The biggest advertiser in the world are P&G, and they've recognized this in the US a number of years ago. So P&G used to be a really small advertiser on audio. They're now the biggest advertiser on audio in the States, and have been for years. They're a data-driven company. They know how things work, and they have decided, because in order to get reach when other media is declining in reach, audio is still ubiquitous, you're going to get your reach. And they realize we can use audio with good creative to build long-term brand messaging, and they've been the #1 spender on audio for about 5 or 6 years in a row. Interesting, P&G haven't replicated that in Europe, and I don't know why, but they, you know, it has, and maybe it'll come to Europe too. But I think, you know, categories such as FMCG, alcohol, other categories, you know, or do more about long-term brand equity building, should be using audio along with audiovisual to get better business results.
And Matt, you spoke about category entry points in the research. I suppose, could you elaborate more on what the category entry points are and why it's important to assess the strength of the brand?
Yeah, so category entry points, as I mentioned, are about accessing memories in terms of that purchase decision. So if I said to everyone in the room now, you're in a situation where you're young, you've got young kids as a family, and you're thinking about a car and you want it to be really safe, what brand comes to mind? I get most people probably thought Volvo pretty sharply. But category entry points and expanding, you know, your association with different category entry points means you can grow your brand. And that's proven by the work in Byron Sharp's work and analysis. And what Volvo, I guess, have started to do, they were always pigeonholed in that safety, you know, kind of category entry point, but have evolved in terms of the cars they make and how they market and talk about the brand to evolve into other category entry points and then grow, share and grow as a brand as a result of that. Because now when you think of maybe performance or off-road, you also think of Volvo. It's not just when you're thinking about the safest possible car. So that's why they're really important. They're shown to link to brand growth and link to ultimately great performance.
And Penny, in the study you chose to test AV first. What do you think would have happened if you'd tested audio only first?
Yeah, we chose to do it that way round because we were kind of looking at the way the market works at the moment, which is that a lot of people put their kind of brand building budget into AV, and we're not sort of saying, oh, AV doesn't work. We're saying that maybe if you take a bit of that budget out of AV and put it into audio, you might find you're actually doing even better. So that's why we did it that way round. If we had have done it the other way, it, you know, in a way it might have looked even better for audio because you would have seen that growth. Advertising on audio would have made all the category entry points grow a little bit on its own as well. But that's why we did it that way round, because we thought it was kind of more in line with the sort of reality of the way marketing works at the moment.
Of course, yeah, and they touched upon it in the conversation earlier as well, and the importance of audio within marketing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So at this stage now, if there is any questions from the floor, is anyone, any hands around there? I'll carry on, so. So I suppose to both yourselves, Penny and Matt, any ideas on what the brands could have done with their audio commercial to get even stronger results?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of been covered a lot this morning in terms of, you know, some of the things that were being talked about like localness, and as I said, like having consistent branding. We saw that the advertising that we looked at, the ones that had more consistent branding, a consistent voice, sort of sonic cues that become inbred. I know Just Eat was mentioned earlier. You know, like all the best campaigns are those ones that build a real kind of thread throughout everything they do. I think that's important. But yeah, a lot of what was talked about earlier this morning about it not all being rational, but being more creating an emotive response, that's got to work.
Of course, and Matt, did you want to come in there as well?
I was going to say what Penny said. Essentially, it's about building that emotion and not being afraid to use a bit of humour and be more emotive and be less cognitive in what we're doing in the audio space, and really leveraging that, and you'll get the most ROI in that respect.
Of course. And Kieran, back to you again. Are brands taking heed of such research, and are they investing into audio?
Well, they are. I mean, I think Andrew showed a chart earlier where, you know, audio takes about 12-13% share in Ireland, which is actually very high versus most of the other markets. I do think I'd love to have the data in Ireland, and we're working on ways and means to get what's the optimum level. I know Radiocentre in the UK did some work on that, and in a market where even audio was a much lower share, looking at all the ROI and plugging it in, their work suggests that it should be around a 20% share. So I just think, you know, brand count in Ireland is very strong. You know, people love audio, marketeers love audio, they're spending on audio, but I just think they could increase the investment. I think there's potential for more based on everything we've heard so far and what we're going to hear from Ralph and Steve in the next section too.
Of course. And is there any, I suppose, long-term effects that you anticipate from brands to adopt a more audio-inclusive kind of way forward?
Yeah, I just think that brand building, I think it's, you know, some brands, you know, focus more on audio-visual. I think sometimes, I think the next section is going to deal with it. I do think some brands struggle creatively when it's just audio. You know, audio-visual, you have a colour, you have a brand name, and it's easier. But I think there's so much opportunity with audio, and actually the next section will really look into that, about how you use audio, how about capturing ears is important as capturing eyes, and I think the next section will really show insights and look at guiding principles around how to really optimize your audio to ultimately deliver profit. That's what it's about ultimately.
Of course, yeah. So I'm going to try the floor again. Any more hands up?
So my question is, you know, I know for us, budget is always a constraint, and where we have prioritized it was on radio rather than TV. And initially the ads have been very functional, and I'm trying to get them to bring it to the emotional level, and we're getting there, we're making progress. Is there much research out there that shows how strong radio alone is on brand building now? It's radio with TV and print, I mean excluding audio-visual. Because I'd love to be able to demonstrate the value in that versus, you know, having the radio give a functional. So I guess my question is there much evidence out there where the radio ads are more on the emotional versus the rational, and that does lead to brand building?
Well, I think, I'd say the System 1 research that showed earlier showed, if you looked at the right-sided brain, all those features and those, you know, the empirical evidence was there that the ads that had more emotive content were driving long-term brand effectiveness. And actually, I know Andrew kind of rushed it at the end, but, you know, there is an opportunity to test your audio, even before you go on air, and we've had quite a lot of success in that area, that brands, agencies, if they want to test their audio in advance, through that System 1 process, I think Andrew put a cost up, but Radiocentre Ireland will potentially subsidise some of that, because we actually want the quality of creative to increase all the time. But that empirical evidence is there. If you do emotive ads, you do it in audio, you do right brain features like character, dialect, storytelling, music, it will deliver long-term effectiveness, and the evidence is there to show it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. We had another hand up here. You'd still like to ask a question? Just up at the front here.
Hi, I'm just curious about elements such as nostalgia and subliminal messaging. Have you looked at that and the impacts?
We haven't looked at it in this particular research. I think earlier Craig referenced it in relation to some work that's been done historically. I think it's about just delivering content that has an emotive element to it, however you do it. Right. I know it sounds simple, but if you look at all, I think the theme this morning was very much about, you need to make content in any medium that people are going to enjoy, but you don't have to be absolutely incredibly engaged in all the elements of the content. It's just to enjoy it at some level, and that transfers into long-term memory without people really thinking about it that often. I thought, Craig's picture of somebody looking at a product and pretending they're spending 15 minutes looking before they buy it isn't true. It doesn't work like that. So I think it's about building long-term memory structures through some sort of emotive content over time is what drives purchase for brands.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions from the floor? I suppose finally, in summary, based on your findings, what would you recommend to, I suppose, brand planners regarding the inclusion of audio in their advertising strategies?
Well, I think the findings suggest that to look at audio specifically and increase investment in that area. And I think there's an opportunity as well to test the creative to make sure that the creative messaging is optimal to deliver that emotional engagement with potential customers.
And Matt and Penny, yourselves, your opinions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting for us to see that, creating audio ads is not as expensive as creating audio-visual ads, and yet it seemed to be that by including audio in there, you were actually boosting things like network size, which is really, really important to growing your brand. So it seems obvious to us that, audio works in this area.
Of course, and Matt, final word to yourself?
I was going to say, yeah, if you evolve, and include audio, you get a better ROI, a better response, and it's just about making sure, taking all the learnings from the papers this morning about how do you optimise audio as part of that kind of media mix, and allocating a bit of budget just to make campaigns reach that bit further and build brand long-term growth using audiovisual and audio.
Thanks very much. Congratulations on the research, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Picton, Penny Browell from Differentology, and Kieran Cunningham from Radiocentre Ireland.